screen today. We're going to be having an approximately 2-hour session. Hopefully it won't go longer than that. And then as many of you have already been informed, we're looking at addressing staffing challenges in the current labor market. And so before we proceed any further, we will go on and have our land acknowledgement.
We acknowledge we are hosted on the land of the Salkis of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and the Inuit peoples.
So just some quick housekeeping rules. Our event is being recorded and live transcripts is enabled. So if you do need live transcripts, you can definitely request that and we will have that activated for you. We will be using Slido, which will be our main chat function today. And so we would encourage everybody that has not been familiar with Slido before to just bear with us. We'll do a quick demonstration as well so that everybody's familiar with the chat room, and then we'll be able to include our chats there. There will also be a raffle that's happening at the end of the event, and then we will have the chance to win a few gift cards once the survey for our event, our feedback survey is completed. So just a quick demonstration for Slido. It's not a very complex interaction, so I would encourage everyone just to join at slido.com. So if you can go into your browsers and just put slido.com, you'll be asked to put in this code. And once you enter that code, you have access to our chat room. So we're just going to take a few minutes. You can just join at slido.com and you can just put the code on the screen. Alternatively, just take a picture of the QR code on the screen as well, and you'll be automatically directed into the chat room. So we'll just take a minute for people to join in. Okay, so just so we can test it out and just make sure that everybody is able to use Slido, we're just going to do a quick activity. So on the screen, if you're already in the chat room, there's a poll that's been activated. And so just select the answer that best describes you in the organization that you're presenting. There we go. So, and I'm seeing responses coming in, so I know that the chat feature is working. There we go. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so I think everybody's familiar. Everybody's in there. That's a good response so far. Okay, and so this is where, in that same feature, where our questions will be answered. Will be put in the chat room in our questions there. So without further ado, we're going to invite Mohamed, who's the acting manager for the Toronto West Local Immigration Partnership, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the Toronto West LIP.
Thanks, Kuku.
Thank you, Mohamed.
My name is Mohamed Hodak, Senior Manager, Newcomer Wellness, and also for time being managing the Toronto West LIP as well. So the Toronto West LIP Local Immigration Partnership is funded by Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada, IRCC, And it's a collaborative initiative working to enhance and promote local delivery of services to newcomers. It's mainly a partnership between social services agencies and other community stakeholders. So the objective is that the newcomers can access and efficiently use community resources available to them. Most of our work is made possible through partners like you. That's why your support and dedications are integral to our work, and we really appreciate that. The Toronto WISLIP is a partnership between three main agencies: Wood Green Community Services, Delta Family Resource Center, and Rexdale Women's Center. That was Toronto WISLIP in a snapshot. I really appreciate your engagement and your support to this event. Feel free to, if you have any questions, any comments, feedback, to unmute yourself and interact with the presenters and with the partners. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mohamed. All right, so we're going to pass it on to Margaret, who is going to introduce us to our first presenter. Margaret, the floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Margaret. I work with Rexdale Women's Center. I'm here to introduce the first speaker for today, this afternoon. The first speaker is Yvonne Zheng. Yvonne Zheng is a talent acquisition manager with human resources at RBC Royal Bank. She joined RBC in 2014 and her team recruits P and CB retail banking roles in the Greater Toronto region. So Yvonne is going to be talking on pre-screening interview strategies for hiring and retaining newcomer talents. So without further ado, over to you, Yvonne. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Hi, everyone. My name is Yvonne Zheng, Manager Talent Acquisition from RBC. I know the weather isn't great today, but hopefully you're all doing well. First, I wanted to thank Toronto West Local Immigration Partnership for inviting me to attend this amazing section to address staffing challenge in the current labor market. Kuku, are you able to put on the slide? Perfect, thank you. So I would like to start with highlighting the importance of the diversity and inclusion. Diversity and inclusion is no longer a new topic for us. We walk the talk in workplace. It is more than policies, programs, or headcounts. So why do we need a diverse and inclusive workforce? First, diversity and inclusion is one of RBC's values. It allows us to simplify, be agile, innovative. Increased globalization has brought with the changing and the diversifying market. In another word, our world of work is increasingly complex. This complexity requires diversity thoughts, sharing ideas, different ways of thinking, innovation, and creativity. Secondly, people go where they are celebrated, not where they are tolerated. Diverse and inclusive workplace earns deeper trust and more commitment from employees. It attracts and retains the best talent. An inclusive work environment makes everyone, regardless who they are or what they do for the business, feels equally involved in and supported in all areas of workplace. This is how we win as one RBC. In RBC, our goal is to help our people realize their full potential. As a leader, we wanted to unlock the potential of our people and ask our employee to speak up for the good of RBC. Building trust by being inclusive, candid, and sincere. Draw out and value diverse views. And you can see the circle of the talent life cycle. And then the talent life cycle starts with the talent acquisition. And this is where I'm going to focus on today. If you can go to the next slide, that would be great. Thank you. One of the biggest challenges we are facing in talent acquisition is a bias. Bias is real and vast and it can exist between people and within systems. Most of us believe that we are ethical and unbiased. We imagine we are good decision makers, able to objectively size up a job candidate and reach a fair and rational conclusion that's in our best interest. But we are human, we are biased, it is inevitable. Therefore, we needed to identify and address biases within the talent lifecycle to drive diversity and foster inclusion. We should always check for bias, including those unconscious ones, and hold others accountable to ask a question, to question ourselves as well. The question we could ask ourselves are, am I selecting candidates based on my own preference, qualities of the previous people in the role, or what a real role requires? When I say an individual is not the right fit, what do I mean? Do I tend to hire, promote, mentor, sponsor the same type of people? Who do I take to important clients across team meetings? How do I identify high potential candidates for the job opportunities, promotions, and successions? Are we hiring for yesterday, today, or tomorrow? Biases affect us and our decision-making process in several different ways. Our perception, how we see people and perceive reality. Our attitude, how we react towards certain people. Our behaviors, how receptive, friendly we are towards certain people. Our attention, which aspect of a person we pay most attention to. Our listening skills, how much we actively listen to what certain people say. Our micro-affirmation, how much or how little we comfort certain people in certain situations. Have you seen the patterns here? Certain people. This is our bias. Whether we are aware of it or not, every and each of one of these things will affect who we select to come in for an interview, how we interview them, who we hire, and our reason for hiring them. We review the resume and the interview notes of two different people and see that they have the same qualification, and yet we end up rating one lower than the other, perhaps with a vague sense that one just doesn't feel like as good a fit as the other. It could be the better one went to the same school as we did. They have the same cultural background or speak same language as we do. Or the better one has a Canadian working experience and the other is a newcomer. Does this sound familiar to you? When we bring bias to recruitment process, we tend to favor candidates who are like us, are affiliated with us, and make a great first impression. But is this a good hiring? How can we or our staff recognize bias and remove roadblock for candidates, especially for the newcomers? The only way to address this kind of issues is to create a structure and a systems where this kind of biases can be reviewed and discussed. I know this is not an easy ask, but if we wanted to make our talent management decision more efficiently and rationally, we have to do that. We make countless decisions every day without even realizing that. Even as you sitting here listen to this, you are making decisions. Here are a few tips might help you to make a better hiring decision. So let's start it before hiring started. As a hiring manager, we needed to ask ourselves, does the current makeup of my team enable outside of box thinking and an innovative solution? What skills, perspectives, and experience are lacking? What is the ideal state of my team to enhance my team performance? How does this new hire fitting into that? As a leader, what are some of the blind spots I have? Do I usually recruit from the same schools, talent source, or how does that limit my talent pool? What type of people do I usually hire and what type of people do I usually avoid? Now let's prepare for the job description for the vacancy. As a recruiter or hiring manager, We should pay attention to the words we use on the job description. Carefully review the list of the requirements. Pause and ask, who are we leaving out? If we ask candidates to have MBA degree, 5 to 10 years experience as a mobile developer, or Canadian experience. To encourage the right individual to apply, be thoughtful about the number of the requirements we list and ask ourselves what is a true must-have, what is merely a nice-to-have skills for the role. During the intake call with the recruiter, hiring managers needed to deliberate about requesting recruitment team to present a diverse slate of candidates. In RBC, one of the metrics to evaluate recruiters' performance is to having a diversity talent pipeline. We needed to develop a diversity and inclusion mindset throughout the candidates' experience to ensure RBC's hiring process is fair, equitable, and inclusive. We needed to demonstrate best effort by ensuring a diverse slate of candidates is shared in every hiring opportunities. More important, we needed to be an influencer to help move the needle on RBC diversity goal, challenging ideas and suggesting ways to promote the diversity of thoughts in our recruitment plans, actions, and decisions. Next step in the talent acquisition is reviewing resume. During screening process, we should focus on transferable experience instead of Canadian working experience. We should probe more on the education gaps instead of where candidates studied. We should look into the experience gap and the reason why candidates changing career path than if candidates have the similar cultural background as we do. When we are unfamiliar, we tend to discount the value. So my team support personal and commercial banking, retail banking roles in the Greater Toronto area. We used to ask candidates to complete assessment before scheduling interviews. We only interview individuals who scored above average. It actually limits the chance for newcomers who wanted to develop their career in RBC. Our assessment is type of personality test. If you are familiar with this type of assessment, you would know it asks the same questions repeatedly by using similar words. If English is not someone's native language, they might have a different understanding of questions due to the cultural backgrounds, or even the explanations are different on the dictionary when they try to transfer the word into their native language. So when we reviewed our recruitment process 2 years ago, we asked ourselves if this step is necessary. What will be missing if we remove it from the process? So we partnered with Seneca Bridge Program to test the difference. The Bridge Program is for newcomers who have the professional working experience before moving to Canada. They have the skill set and experience we're looking for, but they just don't have the Canadian working experience. Because we removed the assessment step from the recruitment process, we were able to hire more candidates from the program than before. The successful rate was significantly increased. We also follow up with the business to get a feedback about their behavior or their performance after they joined RBC. Based on the information, our conclusion is the quality of candidates are same as before. To answer the question we had before, we didn't miss anything. Actually, we were able to remove the barrier for individuals whose first language is not English to land a job. It increased the chance for newcomers to get jobs in RBC. After reviewing the resume, we are ready to conduct an interview. We should assemble a diverse interview panels or hiring team to reflect the different backgrounds and perspective as well as talent who we wanted to attract, understand, and hire. Talk about RBC diversity and inclusion culture and embed those questions into the interview. For example, what have you done to build a diverse team in your current or previous roles? What does inclusive leadership mean to you? Inclusion starts with each one of us. What will be your approach to collaborate with others in a diverse team? Finally, we're in the offer stage. Culture, gender, and ability difference are often overlooked at this stage, which can be barrier to block candidates successfully transitioning into a new role. To ensure offers of employment are equitable across gender, race, and ability, we must be aware of unfair bias in the following area. Negotiation. Men, women, and a person of different cultural backgrounds use different negotiating styles. A particular negotiating style should not be favored or allowed to cause unnecessary disparity between offer package. Availability. Women with families may be perceived as having dual roles and competing responsibilities. Assumptions should not be made about one's dedication or need for flexible hours. Accommodation. Persons with a disability are often subject to discrimination due to perceived time and the cost associated with providing necessary workplace accommodation. Employers should not assume certain accommodation will be required. If accommodation is required, RBC has a workforce accommodation advisor to support a hiring manager throughout the accommodation process. To summarize, immigrants to Canada often experience difficulty finding jobs in related areas. They have encountered problems or barriers in the job finding process. Lacking of Canadian working experience, won't be able to transfer their foreign credentials, and a lack of official language skills were the most critical hurdle to employment. On top of that, newcomers lack knowledge about local job application process, finding themselves applying for the position through companies' website portals, but not getting shortlisted for any jobs. With the English as second or even third language, many newcomers have a difficulty expressing themselves and promoting their skill set. As a recruiter, hiring manager, or employer, we needed to focus on what value newcomers can bring to the team. Company focus on transferable skills, experience, not their accent when they speak. Welcome their ideas, then start stereotyping them. I don't think I needed to emphasize on the benefits of embracing diversity. For many of us, diversity is type of change. Like most change, it takes strong leaders to guide it, takes time, determination, and management efforts to affect that. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some thoughts and a practice, how we help the newcomers to land their job in RBC by removing bias in the recruitment process. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Yvonne. Wonderful presentation and very informative. Our next presenter is also, we are fortunate today in this event to have two speakers coming from RBC. So our next speaker is Hanaan Mohamoud. She's also from RBC. Hanaan is a branch manager at RBC, supporting a diverse team of advisors and business partners. She is currently the chairperson of RBC's Greater Toronto North Mosaic Employee Resource Group. Our mission at Mosaic ERG is to foster a culture of diversity and inclusion by enabling employees of minority groups through investments in their personal development and engagement within our communities. And Hanaan is going to be speaking on building equity, diversity, and inclusivity in the workplace, the employer perspective. Welcome, Hanaan, and over to you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Margaret, for the introduction. I just want to quickly thank Toronto West Lip and the organizers and participants of today's program. I'm very happy to be here, so thank you for having me. So as was mentioned, my name is Hanaan Mahamoud. I am a branch manager at RBC. Yvonne is a coworker and partner of mine, but I'm also a chapter chair of the Greater Toronto North chapter of an employee resource group known as Mosaic. So in the next slide, I wanted to share with you what is Mosaic about. It's going to be the resource group I'm going to be speaking about today that shows how we are building EDI into the workplace and some of the successes that we've had along the way. So our mission statement is right there on the page. So our mission is to foster a culture of diversity and inclusion by enabling employees of minority groups through investment in their personal development and engagement within our employees, within our communities. And so how we do that is by making it a priority and a focus to help newcomers and minorities thrive and succeed in our industry. ultimately, we want to see what everyone else wants to see. We're aiming for a much more inclusive and equal opportunity for all. In the next slide, it breaks a little bit more down about what our mandate is, but also a little bit more of an example of what some of those successes or examples of what those activities would look like. So our Mosaic is a completely employee-led resource group, and the chapter chairs and the co-chairs are employers, so they're managers within the organization. So the ERG is focused on promoting a safe and inclusive environment for all RBC employees of all origins, ethnicities, race, religion, background, and education. Its primary aim and focus is to promote an inclusive culture, to improve the professional profile of visible and non-visible minorities and newcomers to Canada. And ways in which we do that include celebrating different cultural events, offering a variety of different coaching styles that reflect and support individuals differently, networking and mentorship opportunities as well, and giving back to the community through community outreach initiatives. So in the next slide, I'll be breaking down some of the pillars, the 4 strategic pillars that really guide us and allow us to implement all of the activities and events that we have planned using these 4 strategic pillars. So the first pillar that we focus on is to promote education and awareness. We believe more than ever, continued promotion of inclusion through education and awareness will be one of the critical differentiators in how RBC continues to lead in the marketplace. The second pillar that we focus and strive to do is to enable professional development. So we believe that that inclusive leadership and culture can hold together today's disrupted virtual workforce and be a powerful driver of resilience. Our third strategic pillar is to enhance employee engagement and retention. So we believe that an enhanced and engaged employee base is better balanced and that can draw on a wealth of perspectives within the teams. And last but not least, engaging in the community. We believe leading with D&I through Mosaic Employee Resource Group will help us be well positioned within our communities. So we know that at the end of the day, our goal is to have our communities be a direct reflection of the representation within the organization that we have. That's the ultimate goal. And so we're not going to know that or even be able to sustain that without being involved in the community as well, and ensuring that we are staying engaged and are aware of what's taking place, how we can assist, and ensuring that we are highlighting and profiling successes in the community around us. Ultimately, like most, if not all, we believe that diversity is important for growth and prosperity. This is how we can plan for a better future. It surrounds our model for diversity and inclusion by integrating talent and workplace, community, and marketplace all together and ensuring that we have a model that can be sustained. So in the next slide, so I spoke a little bit about what the Mosaic mission statement is. We spoke a bit about our goals, our strategic pillars, and how we are guided and what we are guided by. But how do we measure success and how do we track our activities? So as you can see on the left-hand side, so these are all the regional chapter chairs. Essentially, it's a fairly large task, right? It's a goal that all of us share and want to see happen. But we want to ensure that we are very strategic in the way in which it happens. So they've divided the entire employee base, the entire organization by the chapters listed on the side. And it kind of keeps each region grouped with its community, right? So it makes more sense to have leaders from each of these respective chapters represented by someone within that community. So the GTN chapter, which is the Greater Toronto Look chapter, is the chapter that I chair. So how we measure success, we are at the beginning of the year, we ensure that we submit a Mosaic strategic plan that outlines our strategies for the upcoming year. So the Mosaic group, even the chairs are employees as well, but we are people managers, but the entire resource group and the members within the organization and the members within the employee resource group are employees. And so we make sure that we outline our strategies for the upcoming year and ensure that we hear from our teams, from our groups, what it is that they'd like to see happen and ensure that we build that into our plan. It's very detailed. So we break down the goals on a quarterly basis. So we start off at the beginning of the fiscal year, and we have at least 3 or more events scheduled for each quarter. We also have oversight. So we submit our strategic plans to the national chairs for review. These are senior executive leaders within the ERG Mosaic. So they kind of take a look and ensure that, you know, we're not out to lunch and that we're in line with what the business sees for itself, and also with what the employees want to see for themselves as well. We also meet with our chapter members bi-weekly to ensure that we're planning and preparing adequately on each one of the goals that we have planned, and work with other resource groups within the organization to support one another and meet our collective goals. So collaborative spirit is part of what makes one RBC. And so oftentimes, if there's a specific goal that we want to see happen, we'll reach out to one another and see if perhaps we can host an event together to have more broader impact, as well as to be more effective as well. Lastly, so as leaders and as employers, we know that we have a network of leaders within RBC that we are all connected to. And so what we do is we ensure that we ask for adequate time within our SMT leadership calls to ensure that we are making sure that a message of Mosaic is being reached and sent across the board. And we want to do it consistently and efficiently, and to ensure that the people leader or the people managers within our leadership community are also cascading and sending the information to their employees as well, to ensure that they can too benefit from all the activities and events that we have planned for the year. So in the next slide, these are some of the events that we have already planned for the coming quarter. So we reached out to the employees within our employee resource group through polls and surveys and calls. And essentially, we just asked, you know, what is it that you'd like to see? You know, they're aware of what the mission statement is, and they're aware of what our strategic pillars are. And so everyone's perspective and everyone's goals are a little bit different. And so based on the 4 strategic pillars that we spoke about, which is promoting education and awareness, enabling professional development, enhancing employee engagement and retention, or engaging in the community, the feedback was very clear. And oftentimes when this is the benefit of having an employee-led resource group, the conversations are more candid. They're often not afraid of backlash or retaliation, and can speak frankly about, hey, this is what I'd like to see more of, or these are the things that happened that I didn't quite benefit from the last time, and I'd like to see these sort of events take place. And so we've heard what everyone has said, and these are the events that we have planned so far, and this is just for the month of March, actually. So one of the events is staying engaged in a hybrid world. It's a 3-hour workshop scheduled for March 1st. So this actually came from the post-COVID world. A lot of employees that we know have stated that they find it difficult to stay engaged. And I don't mean engaged in terms of employee, like working, but rather they're missing out on the component of engagement within with their peers, and missing out on that opportunity to engage with their leaders oftentimes when they're working from home. And so there needed to be a way in which we can ensure that those employees that are working from home are still able to feel engaged. And so this was a workshop that came out of that. Another event that we have coming up on March 22nd is Unlock Your Potential and Reach Your Career Goals. It's a seminar happening on March 22nd. Another feedback that we've received is that oftentimes when it comes to enabling professional development, you know, an employee might want to apply for a position, or, you know, want to go after a job, but are declined or not successfully promoted, or did not reach the outcome that they would like. And so they'd like some understanding on how they can unlock their skill sets, how they can unlock their own potential to reach their career goals. And so this will be led, it's a split group between employees and employers, people managers, speaking candidly with HR to share some of the best practices for success there. The third event happening is strategic decision making on March 30th. Something like this might also be helpful for you guys. Reason being, this is tailored specifically for people managers to help them with strategic decision making. A number of things that will also be happening are what we call career fireside chats. Those are planned and scheduled with executives of national office members or senior management, and the topics are entirely decided by the members of Mosaic. So not the co-chairs, but the actual members that subscribe to or are included in the employee resource group. So we found tremendous success with that, because oftentimes individuals will want to see themselves in a certain career point within 1, 2, 3, 5 years, and have a plan that they feel is very strategic. But they also benefit very strongly from hearing from some of those senior executives on what their career path looked like, what some of the barriers that they experienced are. And the questions are tailored, so they're kind of corralled and grouped prior to the presentation so that we can ensure that we make the most effective use of that time. So yes, I wanted to thank you very much for having me. I really, I hope you can tell, we're very passionate about this group. It's helped me quite a bit. I know it's helped a lot of RBC employees as well. And this is one of the ways that we can ensure that we can incorporate EDI in the workplace. It's, oftentimes these are always going to be employee-led groups, and it can be, it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of focus to make sure some of these outcomes are a reality. But we know that when EDI is built into an organization, the organization benefits tremendously. And so it is of importance to us to ensure that we are prepared and ensure that we create employee resource groups such as Mosaic and others as well, to ensure that everyone feels included and represented in the organization. Thank you once again for all your time, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Hanaan. And thank you, Yvonne, as well, both from RBC. So we're going to move into an audience Q&A session. There have been some questions that have been put in the chat. So I'll pass it on to Alan and Megan, who will be facilitating the first round of Q&A. And I think you're muted if you're speaking.
We still cannot hear you, Alan.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me better now?
Yes,
we can.
Okay. I had a microphone, but obviously it wasn't working as I had tested it beforehand. Okay, my apologies. So what I was saying, the first question that was asked was for Yvonne, and when addressing blind spot of hiring managers, what do you think is the main barrier?
I think is as I mentioned, the unconscious bias, right? Unconscious bias. When we create a job description, we always say, hey, the standard job description, I'm not sure, I mean, if you can find, is first is talk about the team, and then go to more responsibility for the role, and then the requirement for the role. So usually in RBC, hiring manager puts what they are looking for or who they are looking for. That comes to the bias, right? And then that's the main barrier. Because when people create a job description, they will, I think it's unconscious, because they will review who they have before. If the previous ones are successful candidates, they wanted to, copycat exactly that individual have. So that's a bias. Or the previous ones a desire for them, then they will have the list of the requirements the opposite of the previous individual. So I think this is I think as a hiring manager, as a recruiter, as an employer, we always have to double check before we put everything on the job description. Make sure, as I always remind of my hiring manager, looking into the transferable skills. Like if you're looking for banking advisor in retail banking role, this financial industry experience is necessary. Sell is a sell. Doesn't matter if you sell products in Canada or sell products outside of Canada. The skill of selling a product or is a transferable. So we have to think outside the box. Don't limit to say, I need a 5 to 10 years experience. I need a bachelor degree. I need an MBA degree. I need an individual from Schulich. Just as I mentioned, pause and think, who do I leave out if I list all those skill set? Let's think about it. What's the essential skills for the role? No, the ideal candidates you are looking for, right? You can list 100, but ideally, how many? actually requirement you are looking to hire for individual? I'm looking for individual who wants to develop their career in RBC. I'm not looking to someone already have the skill. I'm looking for their potentials. And then think the second question, why is newcomer integration still slow in workplace? I think it's our mindset, right? I mean, if all the recruiters, all the hiring manager, all the employer can remove the bias out of the recruitment process, then we should have open-minded, right? Because sometimes even I feel like when I review something, I have an unconscious bias as well. When I interview someone, you probably know, like most of us, when we interview someone, when we see some people walk in the room, you probably already made your decision in first few seconds, whether you're going to hire that individual or not. I think it's very important to have an open-minded and then looking into what can they bring to the team, to the organization.
There's a couple of questions that are somewhat similar. Someone is asking about job posting requirements, and if people don't meet all the requirements, then it can be demotivating to them. Someone was also asking about the experience requirement. Let's say a posting was saying 2 to 3 years of experience required. So again, it echoes back to what you were talking earlier about must-haves and nice-to-haves, and how would someone determine which is which?
Well, RBC makes your job easier because in RB's job description, we always have a 2 section. One is must-have skill set and a nice-to-have skill set. So we make your job easier. You don't have to determine by yourself. Just look at what we are looking for or what is nice to have. That's a surplus. That's a, actually you can bring to the table. Must-have, I mean, for certain role, like for IT role, you have to have a certificate for like, like a SQL, Python for you to code something, right? Those are must-have skills. But we usually say if you have a financial industry experience, that will be in the nice-to-have section. So look at a job description carefully and then see if you have the must-have, and then do you have the nice-to-have? If you have both, then you have more chance than other candidates, right?
And yeah, just following up again on your hiring process, someone was asking about generally like what would be some of the most common roles that are available right now. And I guess not necessarily how often you would be hiring, but I'm assuming you have a portal that would list any openings. Is that right?
Yeah, so if you go, if you're interested in RBC, go to RBC career website. RBC is such a big organization, there's always an opportunity in RBC. Like a retail, if you're interested in the retail banking, we constantly hiring people on weekly basis. If you're looking to like a back office role, national office means corporate role, or if you're looking to IT role, there's always a job for you. So go to RBC/career, should be able to find the opportunity or the area you're interested.
Someone was also asking for small business owners in terms of oftentimes a business owner is wearing multiple hats and facing multiple challenges. So for those people, how could we better prepare them to create more inclusive workplaces?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. It is tough, right? It's a learning process, and I think I don't think any one person has quite nailed it. But I think the best set of advice or the best pieces that I can put out are, for one, to have a clear mission, right? A goal, right? That would be the best place to start. If you have a mission and a goal for what including equity and diversity and inclusion would look like for your business, start there, right? It doesn't have to be complex. I know that with RBC, we're a fairly large organization with a lot of members. So we can be a little bit more bold in that regard. But for a small business, I can totally understand that that might be challenging. And if you're the owner and putting on all those other hats, that could be challenging to do. But if EDI is a goal and a goal that you'd like to see for your employees, then make it a mission. Like pick one specific segment within that topic of EDI and set out a goal set that out as the mission that you'd like to accomplish. Then I would just say, put a plan. It does not have to be complex, but we know that similar to RBC employees, nobody's paid extra to do this. It's kind of on a volunteer basis. However, we know that anything what's planned or what's measured gets done. That's just what I found to be the most successful thing. So it doesn't have to be overly complex. Don't set yourself up for failure. Start small and then find what works for you and build from there. Another thing is if you have a few more employees to spare, but you're still under the category of a small business, don't just put one person and don't just plug anyone, right? Because oftentimes we have a goal and a task. And so we just look for people to kind of fill those positions. And, you know, sometimes you find success with that. But in my experience, I find that often the people that will be leading these this objective or this goal of including EDI into the business, it's a certain skill set that's required to have that as well. And so even if you're delaying putting together some EDI program in your business, it's better to have the right person representing and ensure that we're coaching and supporting them along the way. And it's not easy. So reward and recognition goes a long way, right? If someone is not necessarily getting a paycheck for this, but it is something that they find a value and the company is very clear on why it's important for the business, then it also is equally important to recognize the individuals for the work that they're doing. I know that for me, I'm very passionate about being a member of the Mosaic Employee Resource Group because I'm a people manager, but I am also an employee and I'm also a member of the BIPOC community. So I do want to be involved. But at the same time, I think it would be a little bit of an ouch if I did all of this work only for no one to recognize it. And I know that my people leaders at or RBC make sure that they recognize what it is that I do and the efforts that we're putting forward. And it's also it's one of the things that I actually use to set myself apart from other candidates when I'm looking for positions as well. So it's not a completely lost make work project that goes completely missed, but it can be a very important and powerful tool and leveraged correctly, even in small businesses. But I do recognize it can be tough, but I just say start somewhere and start growing from there.
Excellent advice. We were talking about earlier the recruitment process and unconscious bias. Someone else is asking, after this person has been, let's say, onboarded and in the workplace, how do we then deal with unconscious bias in the workplace? So I know that's a big question and we don't have a lot of time, but I just wanted to ask for any thoughts.
I can add some content here. So in RBC, we do have a regular unconscious bias training implemented regular basis. And then we also have a different material for people to look for more information. And also it's our leader's responsibility, right? To demonstrate that we needed to be the role model, right? When we look at it, the team structure, when we bring new people to the team, when we do those performance review, we needed to remind ourselves, we needed to focus on their performance instead of their background, right? So I think there is another example for unconscious bias is if you're, say you have a job, you needed people to travel, and then when you have a member on the team is or pregnant, unconsciously you will think, oh, because she's pregnant, she probably won't be able to do that because she needs to take care of the baby, right? But that just another unconscious bias. What if they can do the job? We just thought they couldn't because they are conditioned. So I think it's constantly we have to remind ourselves, we have to think about before we make any decision.
Thank you. In terms of, Yvonne, earlier you were talking about like the hiring process and recruiting and expanding diversity and things like that. I know you mentioned about a partnership, it sounded like, that was formed with Seneca and with people that were newcomers without Canadian experience. I'm just wondering, again, how employers can go about recruiting that is more inclusive and just going beyond, let's say, the traditional channels that employers would be using to recruit, to instead build more inclusive workplaces.
So I just wanted to correct one thing. When I say the Seneca, that just for us to test whether we, what's the difference between removed assessment or not. It just for us to do experimental test. But after that, we implement to our recruitment process. So if anyone apply job in the retail banking in the GTR, they don't need to go through the assessment stage. So that Seneca, just for us to see the difference, it's kind of, you know, control group, see how the difference if we do remove the assessment or not.
Alan, we have time for one last question if you have one.
Just reviewing the list to see if there's anything here that we haven't asked yet. There's some comments that aren't necessarily questions.
Well, if we have no further questions, then thank you both, Hanaan and Yvonne, for taking the time to answer these questions for us. I will pass it back over to Margaret, who is going to introduce our final presenter for the day.
Okay, thank you, Kuku. So our final presenter is Hodan Mohamed from JVS. So Hodan is a senior UN fellow for people of African descent at the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, representing Canada, and currently the manager of JVS Youth Services. Hodan has over 10 years of professional experience theorizing and implementing design thinking, focusing on gender and racial equity, community engagement, facilitation, consultative leadership, and youth mentorship. This encompasses providing strategic advice to government and nonprofits while providing practical and actionable EDI initiatives towards institutional change. So Hodan also is going to be speaking on building EDI in the workplace, but this time she's going to be focusing on the service provider perspective. So thank you, Hodan, and over to you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My apology that I can't be on video. I don't have the best connection, so I'll be off video. Thank you so much, Margaret, for introducing me. So I'm going to touch on more like the practical aspect rather than the theoretical aspect of EDI in the workplace, as Margaret said, from a service provider, employment service provider in particular. And yeah, so the first slide. A lot of times people are puzzled because I do research as well around equity, diversity, and inclusion in the workplace from a newcomer perspective, but also overall within the labor market and employers. And a lot of the questions is around EDI. What does it mean really from a practical point of view? And I thought that this chart might kind of spark your curiosity, and then hopefully we can have a longer conversation. So diversity really is asking who is in the room. I think when Hanaan was speaking, when Yvonne was speaking around unconscious bias, if you don't have enough people with diverse experiences, representative of Canada, representative of the people within the labor market, then a lot of voices are missed within that particular sector, within that particular industry. So asking who is in the room, who is making the decisions, and how do we go about coming to those decisions is critical in the workplace. Equity is asking who's trying to get in the room but cannot, right? When it comes to hiring practices, who are we hiring? Whose skills is valued versus whose skills is devalued? As you know, Stats Canada recently released 2022, their numbers that indicated that people of color are highly educated in this country, yet they are paid less than their white counterparts in the labor market. Even if they have the same skill set, even if they have a high education, they will usually earn $5,000 to $10,000 less in the same position. Inclusion asks how everyone idea is being heard. So this is more the practical aspect of it within the workforce, within your own environment, your work environment. That comes into the question of what we call psychological safety. Are people able to really honestly share their feedback, their perspectives? Do they feel included in the leadership discussions in meetings, or are their voices silenced, or do they feel a sense of apprehension of sharing their opinion, their expertise, their experiences within their own workforce? And for kind of a higher level conversations around this is that what is then diversity in particular? So the diversity, a lot of people will consider this the lived experiences, the perspective, the reality of people that may include race, ethnicity, color, ancestral, place of origin, religion, marital status, family status, all the different classification within the Human Rights Code, what we define as protected category in this country. And it comes from having an innovative way of dealing with your workforce, the ability to utilize different perspective in approaching and finding solutions. Without a diverse team, diverse skills and cultural background and life experiences, it's likely that a company or an organization lack those fresh perspectives that can actually drive creative and innovative ways to move us forward in the labor market. If we look at equity, I prefer equity rather than equality, because equity really refers into achieving parity in policy. What does your policy say within your own organization and company? A lot of time we have really beautifully written policies, but have they put into practice? Are they active? Have they been enacted in your company? Are there processes? Are there treatment and outcome within your equity policies or EDI or DEI policies? And for, oh, sorry, is somebody? For underrepresented and marginalized people and groups while accounting for differences. It considers power and privilege, access, opportunity, treatment, impact, and outcome in several areas, including representational equity. What does that really mean in a practical sense? If you look at an organization, a lot of time in the service sector, majority of the people at the front line are people of color. But if you really go higher up, majority of the leaders, the people who make decisions, are not representative of the diversity of the clientele that they've served in that community, neither the staff who happen to be the front line. So that is in itself tells the challenges that you can face and within an organization when it comes to access, opportunity, retention, promotion. Resource equity, the distribution of resources that help reduce inequitable gaps for people and groups. In other words, what are the professional development and opportunities? Are there mentorship within the organization or companies? And this is saying that your network is your net worth in this country. And we do live in a neoliberal economy. And so who are your mentors? Do you have mentors opportunities as a racialized person in the workplace? Sorry, who's calling? Apology. Okay, and so looking at those resource equitable within your organization, within your own company, opportunity given to your staff at all levels is critical if you really genuinely want to address equity within your own workplace. Equity mindedness, an active state of awareness. So when we talk about unconscious bias, we all carry one form of bias or another. I think having an awareness, a consciously active awareness about our biases, our shortcomings, it's human to be. But what is important is that you're aware of your biases, your areas of biases, and you want to make sure that it does not impact the way in which that you treat if you are in a supervisory or managerial role in any level of decision making, that you are consciously aware and actively trying to reduce any harmful conscious bias or unconscious bias that you might have. Willingness to address it, willingness to learn, willingness to really ask the questions so you can learn and do better. All of us learn and do better. There's so many issues and progress that we've made in the past less than 10 years or 5 years around gender identity, around sexuality, that was not something in which that we were aware, but it wasn't something that we were consciously aware from a human right or equitable point of view when I was growing up. But we do better when we know better, as Maya Angelou said, right? Hopefully. And the last one is really inclusion. So inclusion is an active, intentional, because you can't really make any change from an EDI perspective without having the intention and the leadership buy-in, including your board of directors, and to continually process and address inequity in power and privilege, and build respectful engagement, community, because wherever we are, we develop our own community, because as a human being, we are social animals, right? So we always have a level of community, whatever that community might look like. And if we're spending 80% of our lifetime as workers in the workforce, then having a sense of intentional and continuous process and progress around equity matters in the workplace. It builds respectful relationship among people of diverse background. It creates a sense of value in your workplace. You feel valued, you feel respected, you feel welcomed, and having that competence of cultural intelligence, because in Canada, we have a certain workplace normative practices where there's a cultural workplace that exists in our environment. So if a newcomer, instead of assuming that they know or they don't know, it's better for us to kind of engage with everyone and make sure that we are all aware of what are some of the workplace cultural practices from a Canadian lens, from an Ontario lens, when we have so many diversity in one space. Equitable outcome. Equitable outcomes may be measured by indicators. And it's really important for you to have a way for you to measure your progress when it comes to EDI and DEI. If you cannot measure it, you really cannot create accountable, transparent process when it comes to EDI or DEI in the workplace. Around mentorship, around opportunities, hiring, retention, promotion, are people feeling that they have an opportunity, professional opportunity and progress in their own workplace? Or are they stuck in the same role for 10 years? And many times it is racialized women who happen to be in that kind of a dilemma in the workplace. Leadership opportunities, positive performance evaluation. Performance evaluations, even though a lot of people in various industries have said it doesn't really have much of a benefit in the long term unless you were creating that ongoing communications to ensure that your colleagues or your staff are improving in whatever area that is needed. Performance evaluation have to have a lens of equitable lens. Are you giving the benefit of the doubt for some group versus others? Studies have shown that, and for Black people, they get the least benefit of the doubt. There's an assumption made about an error if a Black person commits that in the workplace versus a non-Black person, right? So having that awareness and that conscious, unconscious bias is critical when it comes to supporting people in their learning process, giving and valuing as much as you can, objective way of really assessing somebody's skills and the need areas of improvement that they have, including salaries, coveted experiences that may advance one's professional capacity and career trajectory. I think we can go to the next slide. So this is more of like numbers. So corporation, McKinsey does a lot of work. McKinsey, as I say, it's an American company, but they do a lot of stats and studies in North America, including Canada. And they've identified some of the progress, why EDI matters in the workplace. So corporation identified as more diverse and inclusive were like 35% more likely to outperform their competitor. Diverse companies are 7% more likely to capture new market. I think the IT and IT sectors tend to be very much progressive and innovative in this aspect. The nonprofit sectors has a lot of catching up to do. Diverse team are 87% better at making decisions. Diverse management teams lead up to 19% of higher revenue. 2 out of 3 candidates see companies that have diverse workforces. So a lot of the so-called and the Great Resignation has been ongoing since the pandemic. And so a lot of people in the workforce are really looking, and I see that when I'm interviewing people, are looking for an environment and workplaces and companies and organizations that really value EDI that have innovative way of looking at equitable spaces, equitable access to employees, whether they have families or not. So that is something that a lot of people in my generation, I know that over 70% of millennial employees, and just to give you guys a number, millennials, anyone who was born after 1984, I guess, the organization, they really look at if the organization that they are considering is more innovative, when it has a culture of inclusions. 47% actively look for diversity and inclusion when sizing up potential employers. That is according to Deloitte stats. Inclusive companies are 1.7 times more likely to be innovative. So those are some of the buy-in for financial sector. So when you're talking to EDI from financial corporations, it really comes down, banking included, it comes down to the bottom line. Is it profitable for us? So that is really some of those arguments of why is it profitable in order for a lot of the private sector to have that buy-in when it comes to EDI and DEI. Yeah, inclusive companies get 2 to 3 times more cash flow for employees. They are more likely to retain employees and the best quality skills within the labor market, so on and so forth. Yeah, so we can go to the next slide. In the service sectors, specifically employment sectors, we do work with employers, right? We partner with employers to place our clientele in the labor market. That is really what a lot of bridging programs, but as well a lot of other youth-oriented programs, whether it's funded by Citizen and Immigration in Canada or is funded by Employment Ontario, Service Canada, or Toronto, and the City of Toronto. There's so many different government programs that is really designed to have pre-employment opportunities for youth, skilled opportunities, and financial support for adults as well in the labor market. And so a lot of times when we are dealing with employers, especially small to medium employers, many of them, it's due to capacity, but also due to lack of knowledge and understanding. Some of them might ask for, we have witnessed people, and some employers will ask for a particular ethnic group that they want to hire. And like sometimes we have to engage with them in terms of educating them about basic and human rights with an Employment Equity Act. And so some of the recommendation is really coming out of my experience working with workforce specialists, working with employers in terms of placing, because I do have an employment career counselor, employment counselor background. So some of these recommendation is really, it could apply to any kind of a sector, but it's really based also on my experience, what I've observed from employers and their willingness or willful ignorance when it comes to hiring practices. So ensure that EDI and experts review and approve job posting to confirm alignment with EDI best practices. That's something that I know that the provincial government and the City of Toronto have really worked hard. I used to be the co-chair for the anti-Black racism unit that was established. So it was a legislation that was passed by City of Toronto that to ensure and look at what are the areas of whether it comes into hiring practices within the municipality, civic engagement, whether it's policing, whether it's in education. There was 80 recommendations and 16 actionable items. And my role among the people who were in the partnership and accountability circle was to ensure that those actionable items and recommendations were fully implemented, to ensure that equitable lens or somebody with an EDI expertise were reviewing hiring and practices, including fellowship and internship within the City of Toronto. So this is similar to that. When you have a posting, make sure that you have a lot of organizations now want to profit out of the EDI training, whether they're equipped to do so or not. But it's really important that you ensure EDI expert review and approve job posting to confirm alignment with EDI best practices. Encourage language that focuses on abilities of experience. And this really matters. I think one of the questions were around including newcomers into the labor market. The so-called Canadian work experience has been designated as a form of discrimination by Ontario Human Rights Commission, especially when it's not really addressing competencies or skills or qualifying skills that will enable and make it challenging for the person to do the job. So that if you are denying somebody employment because of the lack of work experience, how do you think they can gain a work experience if no one is hiring them within the Canadian labor market? It's like it makes no sense, right? So highly skilled newcomer candidate can be overlooked because of their lack of experience. Require as part of the job criteria a track record related to EDI. Really, if you have any leadership position that you're hiring for, managerial position that you're hiring for, it's really important that whomever you consider for that role to at least have an understanding of what does biases or unconscious biases are, EDI background experience about inclusions, diversity, and equity, equitable practices and policies, and workplace culture is something in which that whomever you're hiring in a leadership position understands and have experience in. Post only the qualification and skills necessary for the job. A lot of time there's so many hidden things that the person was not anticipating when they walked into that interview. It's really important to be as honest as you can, as practical as you can. It's a process of elimination for the person interviewing as well. You don't want to waste your time. You don't want to waste their time. So make sure that you really only put what matters for the posting. Use encompassing, clear, flexible criteria for assessing excellence that fully document and recognize and reward candidate professional experience. So this allows you to kind of have a more of an inclusive, unbiased, and gendered way of looking at qualification that is inclusive of all people. So, for example, you can use language just as like all genders, if that is something, rather than stipulate women and men, use pronoun them instead of him and her or I, that matters to you. Avoid stereotyping and avoid prioritizing traits and description that traditionally viewed as masculine versus feminine. Next. Yeah, I will also touch before we move into the promoting EDI in the workplace is encourage language that focuses on abilities, right, and over experience, as I think I touched on that, and highly skilled candidate yet can be overlooked. I think we touched on that. And so require as part of the job also, avoid unnecessary and avoid creating unnecessary barriers. For example, posting internally or limiting external distribution of the job postings, inherently value seniority. A lot of time, like I experienced unionized environment where you have to do a process of internally advertising and make sure that whomever is applying, if there was internal applicant, you do the process before you go into the external applicant. So sometimes there is a restriction because of the nature of an environment being a unionized environment, and you have to go by collective agreement and the legal obligation that you have to your internal staff. So that is really understandable. But if those barriers do not exist, then ensure that the job posting inherently does not value seniority, because the more, as I said earlier, a lot of the people who do frontline, the grunt work, in many of the labor market are people of color. So if you are valuing seniority as opposed to experience, skills, and education, it's less likely for people of color to really qualify for some of those senior positions because they haven't been given that opportunities. They haven't had those opportunities. So instead of focusing on the job title, focus on the skills and the experience, because more likely than not, many times they might not have a senior positions, but they've been doing a lot of work that is senior or managerial related. Promoting EDI in the workplace. Develop an equity statement that is meaningful and applies. Go back to the, and applies a wide lens in defining diversity. Avoid using the adjective qualified, because that is really subjective in the equity statement, as all candidates must be qualified to apply in the first place. Why would you apply, right? So next. Provide information about the institution, your EDI policy, community asset, family resources. Number one reason that women who have children under the age of 7 do not seek full-time employment is because of the fact that they are not affordable daycare to this day, and that there's challenges. It doesn't mean that the person is not qualified. It's just the dynamic of family situations where in our society still the burden of child care or even family care falls on a woman's shoulders, which interrupts their career trajectory. To this day, we have yet to make those progress, right? Or at least ensure from a government point of view that everyone has an accessible daycare in order for people to be able to enter the labor force and gain meaningful employment. So keeping that in mind is really critical in terms of family resources for both Canadian born and raised, but also for newcomer professionals who can benefit from, because they're new to the country, they're not really aware of a lot of things. Sometimes I remember when I was in Employment Council, when I offered them services or gift cards, they were like surprised that they can take that and that there was no catch. Like, what's the catch, right? They will ask. But, you know, understanding the resources that exist within the province, within the city that they happen to be in, it's really critical if you're a service provider to really equip your client with all the resources that they need. And don't assume that they don't need it, because you never know. Because poverty doesn't always present itself on people. Encourage applicants to identify their strengths and experiences, increasing EDI in previous environment and in supporting diverse talent pool. Yeah, so I think what I would say is, I think I've covered everything, but I really would encourage people to, especially from a service point of view, provide information about the institutions, the community assets, and all the resources that you can engage with all candidates, including clients that seek employment support in service agencies. I don't know, is there anything after this, Coco? I think I'm good.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I'll leave it to anyone who have a question.
Yeah, so that's timely. So we're just going to move straight into the Q&A session for you. So I will pass it back over to Megan and Alan. And then if there are any questions in Slido, we'll take them now for Hodan.
There's a question here about how can we make the EDI case for nonprofit organizations the same way for banking institutions who have their profits linked to EDI. So, sorry.
I think there is a profit link that you can make. And I know that employment equity standard is being under review. I know that a lot of communities and organizations have been contributing to that. And that applies to us. Anyone who gets in the nonprofit sector, anyone who gets public money from government, there is a level of accountabilities and responsibilities that they owe to both their staff, but to the clientele that they serve. And EDI, it's inevitable. It's inevitable in the market. It's inevitable in the labor market in particular. In about 10 years, 30% of the people in the labor market or and labor force would be people of color, right? So engaging in the EDI, equity, diversity, inclusion, or diversity, equity, inclusion, whichever way that people want to spell it out, is inevitable for the success of any organization, especially in the nonprofit sectors. When you are engaging in the service sector, it's critical that you have both your policy as well as your practice around your policy when it comes to EDI. That is how you retain employees. That's how you attract qualified employees in a competitive market where it's really difficult now to recruit people. There's a high turnover in many of the nonprofit sector of returning employees or hiring employees, people who can do and perform some of the critical roles within that organization. So it is in the interest when it comes to hiring, it is in the interest of nonprofit when it comes to retaining employee, and it is in the interest of the nonprofit when it comes to the communities and the client that they serve.
And the other question was more of a comment, but I'll see if I can make it into more of a question. Diversity, inclusion, equity, and accommodation can be a challenge for managers / employers. As workers, they face complex issues and needs. So how, I guess, dealing with the complexities of individuals in the workplace, then how can we equip managers or employers to best promote the diverse, inclusive, equitable workplaces that we want to espouse?
I know that in many of the nonprofit sectors, people are underpaid, overworked. Sometimes they are doing more than one job in their respective roles. And so that those challenges also exist. The burnout is pretty high, and I know it's been high since the pandemic. And so some of those challenges exist. And I think it really comes down to the board of directors and the EDE or CEO or the VPs of these companies and organizations to really invest in their management team, train them if they have to, even though I'm a strong believer that no one can really train. You can't train somebody on basic aptitude or human right. You can make them aware of it, and it's really up to them to put it into practice, right? Sociologists and psychologists have indicated that you can't untrain people's biases. What you can make people do is be aware, and they can address that on their own in the way in which that they engage with diverse people or engage in their professional field or in their personal life. And I think other than training, consistently creating this space for conversation, having a subcommittee around equity issues, around workplace psychological safety, about workplace culture, how we can improve those things. You can make it organic and everyday. It's not something that we remember for Black History Month or Indigenous celebrations or Disability Act. It really, you want to make the workplace culture to inherently practice those, and it takes time. If the organization have never really been consciously aware of, bother to practice some of those EDI principles, it will take time, and it's okay that as long as you have the will, as long as you have the ability to do so, to take it one day at a time, 1 month at a time, and incorporate it into your everyday practices. And from the frontline staff all the way to leadership or managerial, senior managers, everyone should have the same practices and workplace culture that they understand. So you have to have that buy-in, but you also have to have the same buy-in that exists at an admin in a nonprofit sector, exists with a manager, it exists with a leader, with a CEO, and everyone in between. And I think creating that workplace culture, it takes time, but as long as you're willing to take that time and invest in your staff and invest in your workplace culture, it's possible, and it is achievable, and it's been shown to be achievable.
Thank you, Hodan, for your insights and for sharing these practices. So that concludes the questions.
Thank you for facilitating that for us, Alan. Thank you so much, Hodan, as well, for the time. So we're almost done with our event. We'll carry along just for the interest of time. So the next part of the event is a toolkit, which I will be talking about. So as part of the events, we did advertise that there would be a EDI toolkit that the Toronto West Lib is developing. And what that toolkit essentially will be doing is supporting employers with resources, trainings, and best practices around attracting and retaining newcomer talent. So essentially, most of what we've spoken about today, we are looking at, and the conversation itself is not new. It's conversation that is ongoing, and work has already been done in that space. And so what we did here at the Toronto West Lib is we looked around some of these resources that already exist from the work that service organizations are already actively providing out there for inclusive practices and for newcomer professionals, and getting them involved with in the employment space. And so the toolkits will be shared after the event. But just to provide you with a quick overview, it's a 3-section toolkit, where in the first section, we look at best practices. So best practices around developing job postings, around onboarding newcomer talent, even beyond the first week and even beyond 3 months, for example, how to keep them integrally advancing within the organization as well. And also we look around best practices for creating EDI working groups. It's something that we have discussed in the event so far around making sure that you leverage the existing diversity of your organization. And so for this chapter, this is the kind of things that we look at in this chapter of the toolkit. In the second chapter, we are looking at training. And of course, Hodan just spoke about training management and leadership to be able to become more aware or access more information around these biases. And so what we have done in the second chapter of the book of the toolkit is partner with Access Alliance and Access Employment, and then the Toronto South Local Immigration Partnership. They came together and they worked together to provide us with a 3-part training series, which looks at equitable hiring practices, ensuring cultural sensitivity and inclusion, and as well as internal mobility and career advancement for human resource practitioners, for the talent acquisition managers of employment organizations and employers in general, so that they have the leadership have the required training. In the third chapter, which looks at resources, we understand that we have to leverage the existing partnerships that exist within settlement agencies and newcomer agencies that are already actively working to support newcomers. And so that third chapter looks at how to build better connections between settlement agencies, looking at how to build employer integration, and also a general playbook, a more comprehensive playbook around building more inclusive practices for newcomer professionals. And so the toolkit will be shared after the event. All registered participants, we do have your information, and so please be expecting this toolkit, and we hope that you'll be able to use it and have a good experience using it as well, since we came together to put this resource out for you. And so yes, that's it for the Toronto West Local Immigration Partnership EDI Toolkits for employers. So moving on along, there is a chance to win some money, actually. So we're almost done with the event. So we're just going to complete a quick events feedback survey. And then we're just going to just get your thoughts on the event so far, some of what has been shared, some of what could be improved. What I will do right now is I will stop sharing my screen and I will drop the link to the survey in the chat. We're just going to take about 4 minutes it takes about 3 to 5 minutes to complete. We're just going to fill out the survey real quick. I encourage everybody to complete the survey because it really helps us make our events better. And then once the 4 minutes is up, we will just do a quick raffle draw. There are 4 gift cards available to be won for Walmart. Right. So just bear with me. Okay, sorry for that long link, but if we could just take a time to open the link in the chat and just take a few minutes to complete the survey, we'll be able to wrap up our event soon enough. So just about 2 more minutes. Yes, just about 2 more minutes and then we'll proceed. Please, we do encourage you to fill out the survey because like I said, it helps us to better program our events for the future. So please, a few more submissions will be appreciated. Thank you. Okay, thank you for that. So we have some good responses here. So I'm just going to do a random draw on my back end, and then I'll announce who the winners are as I see all of your responses. So bear with me. So our first winner is Gonzalez. If you can just turn on your camera, just wave for us from Costi. Yeah, there you are.
There you go. Hi.
Hello.
Thank you.
Thank you. So you are a winner of a $50 gift card. I have your email, so I'll communicate all of that to you. You're a winner of a $50 gift card from Walmart. Okay, you're our first winner. Yes.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope you enjoyed the event though.
Yes, I did.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to do a second draw and then we'll see who our next winner is. The next winner is Sabrina Louie from JBS. Do we have a Sabrina here with us?
Hi, everyone.
There
Thank you
you
so
go.
much for the sharing.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us as well. So I will send you an email and then I will communicate how you will get your gift card shortly after the event. Okay, we got two more. Bear with me. Okay. Okay, and we have one of our members. So Margaret, you are winner number 3.
Oh my goodness. For real? Thank you
Yes,
so much. Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Yes, so Margaret was also the facilitator that did the introduction of our speakers as well. So thank you for doing that as well, Margaret.
Thank you. I
Okay.
appreciate that.
No problem. And now our last winner, drum roll, please. Okay, and our last winner is Alan Otts.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Alan, you may be familiar with, also did our question and answers as well. So I will actually encourage all of you that I mentioned your names, just put your names in the chats quickly for me so I don't forget who our winners are. But yes, thank you all. Thank you all for filling out our survey as well. Right, so we're come to the end of our event. I'm just going to pass it over to Sandra Baker, who is also one of our action group members here at the Toronto West Lib, and she will close us off with the closing remarks.
Thank you, Kuku. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. I would like to, as Kuku says, my name is Sandra Baker. I'm from VPI Working Solution, and I'm also a part of this group. I'd like to thank all of the attendees for attending today and the participant, and all of the speakers who came out today to give us an insight on EDI. First, I'd like to thank Yvonne Zheng, Manager of Talent Acquisition, RBC Royal Bank, for giving us more insight on pre-screening, interview strategies for hiring and retaining newcomers, talent. Hanaan, Mahamoud, from branch manager from RBC Royal Bank, who brought us the employer's perspective on how to build EDI in the workplace. Hodan, Mohamed, manager of youth services, JVS Toronto. She also brought us how to build EDI in the workplace from the service provider's perspective. And also everyone on the Employment Resources Connection Action Group, Toronto West, Local Immigration Partnership for organizing this event. And again, thank everyone for coming out. And I hope this session was informative for everyone and that you will be able to take back some of these ideas or some of these, things to implement in your workforce and to help others who are newcomers who are looking for employment. So thank you again, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the day.